Hi, I have two videos about non-destructive modeling here on YouTube, and they are by far the most viewed videos on my channel. Many people have asked for more content like that, and so in this video I want to show you a few more tricks, like how to turn just a few edges into a crazy metal bracket like this, or create this fan cover out of just these few vertices. This video is not a how to make a fan cover tutorial, but instead it is intended to hopefully give you a few aha moments and to teach you how you can get certain results with an absolute minimum of modeling mesh data. Let's start and see what we can come up with, shall we? Okay, I'm gonna start with just a plane, and in edit mode I will delete these two vertices, so I'm left with two vertices and an edge, and GY1 so that it's in the center here. Okay, two vertices and an edge is basically the minimum that you need to do anything, really. So maybe I want to use an extrude modifier to create a plane again. And you might be thinking, but there is no extrude modifier. And you're right. But we can use the screw modifier as an extrude modifier. So we change the axis to Y, and then we change the angle to 0 degrees. And now the screw value here is basically the extrude value. So we have an edge and we're extruding it. Let's extrude it 2 meters. And we're basically back to our default plane, but we're creating it out of a single edge. Now, right away, when I go in here and enable wireframe, we can see that we get all these edges in between, and that is because we have the steps here. We can turn those down to 3, and if we go in and edit them and enter 1, it goes to 2. The lowest value we can do here is 2, and I couldn't find any other trick to set this to 1. So we always get this edge down the middle here, but we will just have to live with that. I wish I could set this to 1. I don't know why I can't. Okay, we can also enable merge vertices, but in this case it doesn't really do anything. We have iterations, which we can use to create more iterations going on the y-axis. But really, that's all we need. We created a plane out of an edge. Now, in edit mode, I can take this vertex and in front view, for example, extrude it and create something like this. And take this one and extrude it. And you can see, just with one edge going along here, a few vertices and edges in between, we already have something that looks like this. Now this is set to smooth shading, and if I switch that off I get this, but of course I want smooth shading because I'm going to add some bevels. But in order to get this looking correctly, I have to go over into the object data properties here and in normals enable auto smooth, set to 30 degrees, the default is fine. And now I have this. Cool. Now let's give it some thickness, because nothing is infinitely thin. So let's add another modifier, solidify, and give it some thickness. Maybe make it look like a metal bracket. And if we go to front view, we can see this is a little bit weird looking because this seems to be thicker than here. We can fix that by selecting even thickness. Now it looks nice. Cool. Now, for example, I want a bevel in here. I want this to be round. Okay. How can I do that? Well, bevel, there's a modifier for that. Let's use it. When do I want to apply the bevel modifier? The modifier stack here has an order and it's executed top down. So first we take the screw modifier, in this case is our extrude. Then we solidify and now we bevel. That's not what I want. I want the bevel to be on the top here. Okay. And I'm going to set the bevel to only vertices And now we have a round, basically a bevel everywhere on all of the vertices that are not at the end. So this one doesn't have a bevel and this one doesn't, but these ones do. But I just want a large bevel here on this edge, basically, although we don't have an edge because the edge is created by the screw modifier. How do I do that? I can set my bevel modifier. Again, set it to only vertices because we only have vertices in our mesh. And then we set it to weight. And now we can hit N here. Oh, and also let me switch on the screencast keys down here. And in the item tab here, a vertex can have a bevel weight. So now all of the vertices have bevel weight 0, but I can select this one here and turn it up to 1. Okay, so this vertex now has a bevel weight of 1, and the bevel modifier set to only vertices uses the weight and assigns this bevel. Now this only has one segment, maybe turn this up to 7. So we have 7 segments here, we have a nice bevel, okay. And we only see the bevel on this vertex because all the other ones have a bevel weight of 0. And we also get this horrible thing here. There is a boo-boo in our mesh now because of this bevel modifier. And we can see what the problem is by changing the thickness here. You can see the solidify modifier always changes the thickness or extrudes basically a face on the normals. And so we have a problem with the normals here. These ones are going this way and these ones are going that way. You can see there's something weird. And the problem comes from the screw modifier, but there's a checkbox called calculate order. And then when you select that, we have perfectly good mesh again, and the thickness works. Okay, cool. So now we have one edge that has a nice round bevel. But of course, this bevel modifier here, the first one, it's applied to all of the vertices. It's just that this vertex, for example, has no bevel weight. So what if I just give it a little bit of bevel weight? Looks nice. How about I switch this over to madcap and take something like this. Cool. Now this is an infinitely sharp edge. I'm just going to leave it for now, but maybe this one should have a little bit of a bevel too. You know, so now we have, I don't have mesh. I'm not editing mesh. I can still go in and change the size of the bevel just by using the bevel weight, which is a form of parametric modeling. And it's non-destructive. I can always go back in and change stuff. If I had this bevel in a real mesh, by going into edit mode and hitting Ctrl B and then using the scroll wheel to define the amount of segments, then I have this bevel and editing it is kind of a nightmare. But here, by just creating everything with modifiers, nothing is a nightmare. I can select more segments. I can change the general size of all of the bevels with the bevel modifier. And I can change the size of one of the bevels just with the bevel weight of a vertex. Okay, so this is already cool. Now, what if I wanted to have nice round corners here at the ends? Can I do this? Yes, I can. I'm gonna select this one and that one. Those two should have a nice round corner going this way. I'm gonna go over here, add them to a new vertex group. I'll call it round corners and assign those two selected vertices to that. And then of course, I'm going to add another bevel modifier. By the way, these buttons up here, they are from the add-on that comes with Blender that's called modifier tools. So you just go to add-ons and enable the modifier tools, and then you have these buttons. And I like this one here because it just expands or collapses all of the modifiers. So these two vertices are in a vertex group now called round corners. Let's add another bevel modifier. Where in the modifier stack does it have to be? Let's think about it. So here we have the bevels to go this way, right? From front view, we have these bevels. Then we add the screw modifier to get this going back on the y-axis. And right now, the next step should be this bevel modifier. I will call that round corners as well. So here I want it in the stack at this position after the screw, which is an extrude. Enable it. Use vertex group, the round corners vertex group, and only vertices. And here we go. Now we have this, and we can turn up the segment. And we have a nice round corner here on all four corners. And like I said before, the screw modifier doesn't allow steps of 1, which always gives us this edge down the middle here. And the bevel modifier that we have now for the round corners using the vertex group, of course, also adds a bevel here to this. You have to imagine this virtual vertex here. Because this vertex is in the group, then this one and that one are also in the group. So we get this horrible thing here in the middle. And I guess we're just going to have to live with that for now. So now we have this. We have the solidify, and it looks like that. And that's already kind of cool. Now let's cut some stuff out of this, because that's always fun. Boolean operations. Let's add maybe a cylinder. Place it somewhere, go into edit mode, scale it down, maybe place it over here, like that, and try and cut away something from here. Now, how do we cut stuff out? Well, we go to our metal bracket, or whatever this is, and we can use a Boolean modifier. The Boolean modifier has an operation, difference, union, intersect, and then we can select an object here. But doing all this manually here is a lot of work. There is another add-on that Blender comes with. You just have to enable it, and it's called Bool Tool. So you go to your add-on, search for Bool Tool, enable it, and it gives you this edit tab here, and here's the Bool Tool. And the way you can cut something out of, or one object out of another object, is by simply selecting, I want to cut this, and then shift select this. I want to cut this out of that. And then I want to use the brush Boolean, not the auto Boolean. This actually cuts stuff away and modifies the mesh. This is just a modifier. And since we're doing non-destructive stuff here, this is perfect. I want to brush Boolean difference. And here we go. We cut the cylinder away. The tool creates the Boolean modifier, sets it to difference, because I clicked on difference. The cylinder is being cut out of my metal bracket here. And the tool also sets the viewport display here to bounce, so that it's actually, you know, the cylinder disappears, because otherwise we wouldn't even be able to see that we cut stuff out. So it automatically sets the cylinder to bounce, but it's still there in edit mode. We still have a cylinder, we can still edit it. We can still move the cylinder. And this is the cool thing about the non-destructive workflow. So we have this cylinder inside of this object. Inside, in edit mode, I can still do Shift D on the x-axis and maybe cut this out here. Rotate it. Let's do 90 degrees and cut it away like this. Okay. So it looks like that. I can still go in here and extrude this up and change the shape of my metal bracket completely, what is happening here? Well, this vertex here, this guy, is inside of my rounded corners group, so I just have to take this out. I just want this one in the group, which it is, because I extruded this one up. Okay, so now I have this. I can hide the wireframe. So this is that. I can go in here into edit mode, maybe select this cylinder, Shift D, scale it down, put some holes into the mesh here, like that. Maybe put a hole here, Shift D on the X, another one there, Shift D, scale it down, Shift D, you know. Can play with that, or I can even do Shift D, bring it over here, rotate it, cut some holes into the bracket on this, in this area here. Also, of course, I can L, Shift D, rotate, maybe cut a hole in here and over here. Make it look interesting. So this is what I have now. Cool. Now, the modifier stack of this guy here, the last thing we're doing is cutting in with a Boolean modifier. I can also see that I need to go select this and shade smooth. So I'm shading all of these Boolean objects here smooth, so that when they cut into my object, the inner edges, faces here are also shaded smooth. So this looks very nice. Now, sometimes, or most of the times, with the Boolean modifier, when you create or when you cut into stuff, the Boolean operation creates new edges and faces. Right, so it creates this kind of mess here. And sometimes this can create shading artifacts. So, you know what? I also want a nice little edge on all these infinitely sharp edges here. So I want another bevel at the end, set to angle, which gives me this. And then there's also one thing that I might also put in here, and that's the new weld modifier, which is basically a merge by distance, which you might be familiar with when editing mesh. You can always go to cleanup. Where is it? Let's see. Mesh, cleanup, and then merge by distance, which will merge vertices that are very close to each other. And now there's a modifier in Blender 2.82 and later, I believe, which is the weld modifier, where you set the distance here. I will put that up underneath the Boolean. So after the Boolean, I want to merge the vertices that are close to each other. Okay, so weld, and then I have the Boolean at the end here, which gives me this nice bevel along all of the edges. And then if we get horrible looking triangles like this, these are Boolean artifacts, shading artifacts, because the Boolean operations create all these edges and doesn't create very nice mesh, basically. There is one last thing we can do, and that is the weighted normal. And that usually fixes shading problems after the Booleans on the flat surfaces. So you still might be seeing some shading artifacts like right here. I don't know if this shows up in the recording, but here we have these triangles in the smooth areas, but the weighted normal usually fixes things on the flat areas. So I think this looks very nice. And remember, this whole thing, I mean, except for the cylinders for this stuff, but this guy is still just a few vertices and edges, and you can still move that around. Extrude, maybe down. Again, we have this vertex in here that is now in the round corners group. We can remove them from the group to get this. Now this is a very sharp edge. Oh, I also moved them out here, which is just select S, Y, 0. Bring it all in onto the same plane here. Okay. Maybe do something like this. Take this guy, give him a little bit of a bevel weight. Okay, so we have only one sharp edge, and that's that one. Just for demonstration purposes. Oh, this one is very sharp too, which is fine. So that's what it looks like. We can still go in, we can still edit. Of course, now that I moved this stuff around, these two cylinders here are not really doing anything anymore, but we can cut. Oh, let's cut in here like that. Cool. At an angle. You get the idea. This whole object is created with just this. Okay, that's that part done. Now let's delete all of that and start again. And the second thing I want to show you is I recently bought a new PC case, and it came with a fan cover, and I'm not using it, but I thought that it looked cool. Here's a picture of it. So looking at that, I thought, how can I use non-destructive modeling to create something like this? And the first thing that you always start with is basically the negative space. So you think about the stuff that you want to use as a Boolean operand to cut away from the metal piece. So how do you cut away these slots or slits or vents or whatever you call them? Well, first I would usually maybe start with a UV sphere, rotate it sideways, go into edit mode, take all of that, maybe move it out like that, and then use this object to cut away from the metal plate. But there has to be a better non-destructive way to do this, and of course there is. I'm gonna start with a plane, and I will delete these two. So I have just this, GY1 to bring it up, and then GX, move this one over here. So I only have this one edge with these two vertices. Okay. Now, how can I make a cylinder that has round caps out of this? All in a non-destructive way. Well, to give this some volume, I'm gonna use the skin modifier. Switch this off and switch on smooth shading maybe, and it gives me this cube sort of thing. Now in edit mode, the skin modifier uses the size of a vertex. Yes, a vertex has a size, although it's always this just infinitely tiny little point in 3D space. It still has a size information assigned to it, and you can edit the size information of a vertex in edit mode with Control A. So Control A and then move the mouse, and here we go. I'm scaling the two vertices to about this size. And now to make it round, I'm using a subdivision surface modifier. Okay. So now I have this all made out of a single edge. Well, this looks cool. Now, still in edit mode, I take them both, Shift D on the Y-axis, and maybe GX this vertex inwards to get this shape. Take those, Shift D on the y-axis, bring it down here. I'm just eyeballing the distances here. Okay, maybe move this in a little. The origin of this object is still in the center here, and that's where it should be and has to be. Just make sure it is. Okay, so now we have this. How do we get 4 around? Well, I'm just gonna add an empty sphere. Scale this size down like this. Now take this guy with the skin and the subdivision on it, add another modifier, array, not relative, but object, use the empty. And now I take the empty and rotate it 90 degrees. And I can set the array to 4, and now I have 4. Cool. Now I need this diagonal slot here. Of course, I can do that by simply taking these two, Shift D, Y, move them here, rotate 45 degrees, place them somewhere where it looks nice. Now I want this to be longer. I can GG, which is edge slide, but I can't slide it beyond this point unless I hit the C key on the keyboard. I just realized that C. Oh, when I hit the C key here in edit mode, it doesn't show up down here for the screencast keys. Interesting. Okay. Well, it is the C. C like Chris. Okay. So now we have this. This object just has 4 edges, 8 vertices, and it's creating these 3-dimensional objects with volume, with rounded ends. And now this is perfect to cut into my metal plate. So let's create a metal plate. Shift A, mesh, plane, edit mode, maybe bring it in a little. Okay. Now this has to have some thickness, so solidify, make a metal plate out of it. In front view, bring it up a little to be in the center, like so. And now I want to cut this, Shift select into this, in edit, bool tool, brush, difference, and here we go. Now this metal plate of course needs some rounded corners here, that looks horrible. So in edit mode, I'm taking these, it just has 4 vertices, it's a very simple plane. But this plane obviously needs a bevel modifier. Put the bevel all the way at the top here. So the first thing I'm doing before cutting into it or solidifying it is to round the vertices with maybe 7 segments to have this nice round stuff here. And I also want to shade it smooth, which gives us this horrible thing, because we need to enable auto smooth, which just keeps the normals, you know, flat when it's flat. And here the rounded corner here has a nice smooth shading now. Okay, this is cool. Now on top of all of that, I want to add another modifier, a bevel, to give me this nice bevel here, because we don't have infinitely sharp edges in the real world. Now all that's missing is the center hole. How do we get that? Well, you saw before that I used a cylinder. So of course I could use a cylinder, but that's not very non-destructive, is it? Because you create the cylinder, you define how many segments the cylinder should have, and then that's it. And in order to edit it, you have to edit the mesh. Is there a way to create a cylinder? Boolean operations always have to be on objects that have volumes and that have mesh data. You can't use curves for Boolean operations. So how can we create a cylinder in a sort of a non-destructive way? And just like with these guys, yes, there is a way to do this. I'm going to add a plane, or start with a plane, go into edit mode, scale it down, maybe bring it up on the C axis. Okay, I don't know how big is this whole, doesn't matter. I'm going to bring these, or delete these two, take these two, so I still have only a single edge. I'll bring this guy to a Y location of 0 and bring both of these vertices to an X location of 0. So I have an edge where one vertex here is in the center of the world, and the other one is just stretched out here on the Y axis. It's just one edge. And now to this single edge, you know what? I'm gonna hit the slash key on the numpad to isolate this view, single edge. I'm going to take a screw modifier on the Z-axis, 360 degrees. That's good. Let's see what the mesh looks like. Looks like this. We can select merge vertices and calc order. And we can define the steps here from a triangle to any detail circle that we want. So looks like that. Let's just leave it at 16 for now. And now I'm going to add a solidify to give it some thickness. So basically extrude it down. Okay, now I have a cylinder, and I made a cylinder out of a single edge. And just like before, select the cylinder, select this, go to the pool tools, brush difference, and we have a hole in our metal plate here. So we have this Boolean operation here. I'm going to move it up so that the last thing I have is the bevel, and then we have that. And I can select this object, which is this edge, rotated around and extruded down or solidified. And I can still go in here and change the resolution. I can make it a triangle or a square, or maybe go to 32 to give it a nice round circle cutout in the middle. It is shaded smooth, so the inside here should be smooth. And that's it. That is our fan cover done. All done with a single edge here, and then those few edges here. And remember, we can still go in and edit this. So if we're not happy with the shape of our, or the design of our fan cover, we can go in here and do this. We can maybe select these, Alt A, and make this slot larger. We could even maybe go to top view, GY, do something like this, GY. Okay, I'm still eyeballing stuff. And we can even scale this and this vertex, Alt A, and maybe do something like this. Is this cool or is this cool? Even here, make this vertex larger. And it's all non-destructive. We can still edit everything. And then, of course, when we're done and we want this object to be a real object without any modifiers, we can always first copy it, duplicate it to have a backup, and then just apply all the modifiers and then, you know, work from there. I can see some shading artifacts going on here. Maybe the weighted normal modifier at the bottom here helps. Of course it does. Looks very nice. Alright guys, I hope you learned something new. I hope you liked this video. If you do, please smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. I have a lot of videos on here about modeling, about materials, and animation notes if you're interested in that. I just recently published a new beginners series with 10 videos on how to get started with animation notes. So check out all the videos on the channel. Have a good day, and as always, thanks for watching. Chris P out.